Hello, everyone. This is a brief introduction to where to find and how to use the Anki cards that I've curated over the years here at Creighton School of Medicine by me, Mark May. And I wanted to make this because I'm trying to do a big final update and get all of the cards into final, easily accessible form with relatively standardized templates. And from there, leave them for you all to use for however long this is useful to you. So, to begin, a little bit of housekeeping. All of these cards are made by medical students, not professors. So, the way that these were constructed is I downloaded a version of the On King deck that had been commented by the previous year of medical students and their Anki Cards Club from the class of 2024. And this was, I believe, version 9 of the On King deck. The current version is now version 12, and it's being continuously updated. And then I went through those cards during lectures. I pulled the relevant cards while the professors were giving the lecture, and if there was anything that I felt wasn't adequately represented by the deck that was available, I would make a new card. So over half are cards that were not originally made by me, although I updated some, rewrote things to clarify language, added explanations in the descriptions and stuff like that sometimes. And then another probably third to quarter are original cards from me to fill in the gaps from those decks. This was all done in fall 2021 to spring 2023, and all of it was meant to be a study aid, but these are not definitive. They're not made by professors. They're not even vetted by professors. And so there may be factual errors. There may also be information that's out of date or emphases from our lectures and our professors that are not the case, as professors change over time. So I want you to be aware of all of that and be aware that it is your responsibility to see to your own learning, and this should never be your sole resource. I would encourage you to check out textbooks or other supplemental resources online. I'm personally a big fan of Amboss, but whatever it is, don't just use these for your studying. The other thing to be aware of is, again, that datedness. These are old. If you want to use the On King deck in its most up-to-date form, you have to look up a service called Anki Hub, which is basically a Google Drive for Anki decks where things can be updated in real time. And I've never transitioned our stuff over to Anki Hub because there is a fee to use it. I believe it's $5 per month. I have read that there are scholarships easily available that you can get without too much trouble if that $5 per month is prohibitive for you. So if you're interested in the most up-to-date Anki cards that are constantly being updated and tweaked and made better, that's where you want to go. These cards are not getting that same treatment. They have been made, they have been maybe a little bit edited, and then they have been posted, and now I'm just tweaking some formatting stuff and repackaging everything for the final form. So be aware of all of that. The last thing is, because a lot of people use Anki, you may feel pressure to use it as well, but if it doesn't help you, don't bother. I personally have really fallen out of love with Anki over the years. It is still a really helpful tool for me, but it is certainly not a complete study strategy, at least for me. And just be aware of what your own learning needs are. If this is not a tool that's useful to you, please don't use it, and don't feel pressured to use it. Take the permission to learn the way that you want to learn, because ultimately that is what you're responsible for. So with all of that said, we're going to just briefly cover where to get the Anki cards, and then once they're downloaded and on board, how to navigate them. So to go to the overall shared drive, you can visit this link here, and I will email this out to all of you as well. It should be in an email from me. Go to the Anki folder and then Mark's Anki cards, and the updated ones will not be in folders. There are older cards in here, but use these if you can. The most up-to-date one currently is Block GI. I need to go back and refix these, so please give me a moment. But these are brand spanking new, fresh, updated, so M2s, it's your lucky day. M1s, I'm going to try to get the Hemonc and Immunology cards out as soon as possible so that they're ready for you as well. First thing I want you to be able to do is click on this triple dot guy and go to file information and details, and it should, this doesn't always work for me for whatever reason, but it should say how many cards there are in the deck, which is a good piece of information to know. So then you download, and most of you probably have already sorted this out, but just in case, we're going to download this. It's going to take a little while. And in the meantime, I'm going to open up a relatively brand new Anki thing. Now, I have some add-ons that you may not have, so I have a background photo and I have my Amboss linked and all of that. Don't worry about that. That's inessential. Once it's downloaded, you open it, and it should start to load. So if you have no cards, it will not have you do anything important, right? I have no cards for it to overwrite, so this update stuff doesn't really matter that much. And so you just hit import. And then it will say, okay, you've got a whole bunch of notes, and that's great. So what your thing will look like now is like this. When it says block in the name of the cards, that tells you that there are subdecks that I've made for embryology, histology, pathology, physiology, pharmacology, and clinical relevance. You don't have to use the subdecks, but we'll talk about all of that in a minute. So when you first download it, all of the cards are going to be active, and you don't want that. So go to your browser and go to the deck in the browser over here. And then you'll see here are these, hey, look, 1,985 cards. Great, that's excellent. That means we've got the download correct. What I want you to do is highlight all of them. You can just use Command A and then either click suspend up at the top here, or you can hit Command J, which is my preference, and you'll see parentheses appear around all of the cards, and they should be highlighted yellow unless they have a different flag on them, which I think none of these do. Now, if we go back to our main page, none of these cards are active. And so you have nothing to do. That's great. If we go to browser, there are a couple different ways to engage with these cards. So if you go down to the tags, go under lecture, and then 2025, you may see other tags in association with this. Either way, I wouldn't worry about it. Where you need to go is lecture 2025. Other stuff under lecture was made by other folks. If those tags are helpful for you, feel free to. So the made by Mark tags are what you're going to be after here if you're using the cards as I have designed them, which you don't have to do, but you can. So this course is GI. There are some cards that are relevant to multiple blocks. As you can see, the GI deck has some of the renal and MSK and whatnot, but you want GI. And then there are two different ways that this is broken down. It's broken down by those subdecks. So if you just want all of the clinical cards or all of the physiology cards, you can go in. And it also should be broken down by lecture. So one of the early lectures of the course for GI is congenital malformations of the GI tract. You can see it has 110 tagged cards. And so if you go to this tag, all of the cards here should be associated with the congenital malformation lecture. So let's say you've just watched that lecture and you want to use these cards to study. You can go to this tag under week 1, and you can hit Command A and then Command J or toggle suspend. Either works, and these cards will appear. Great. Okay, so let's close the browser and see how to use them. You can see that only 20 of them have loaded, and that's because we have not told Anki how many cards it's allowed to use. So if you go over here, I have this set to be a shield. Yours probably looks like a Metal Gear unless you have changed it. Click here and go to options, and then all of the customizable stuff for Anki will show up for you. First thing you want to look at is new cards per day and maximum reviews per day. This is how many brand new cards you can do, and you can cap this at something if you're interested, so 50 or 100, or you can just say maximum, I don't care. And then maximum reviews per day is how many cards overall you're allowed to do before Anki caps you. And that you should set higher than your new cards per day because these will build up over time. The next thing it's going to show you is the new cards. And the learning steps for the new cards are basically how long will the service wait to show it to you again if you get it wrong and if you get it right. Now, I'm personally not a fan of doing it again in 10 minutes if you get it right. So I like to set this to 1 day, which basically means if you get a card correct, you will see it again 1 day later. And if you get it correct again, you will pass it into Anki's algorithm to then say, okay, I'm going to decide when you next see this based on how well you've done. I would leave these at their presets. I don't think it matters that much. Insertion order is random versus sequential. It doesn't matter that much. Sequential will just show you the cards in order, and random will show them to you in a random order. For new cards, I actually think that sequential can be beneficial because then you're seeing the same concept repeatedly and it can help solidify the concept. Lapses, this is saying you will need to see the card again in 10 minutes and then it will pass back into cards like you never got it wrong. You can add steps to this. So for example, if I put 10 minutes, 1 day, 3 days, then what it's going to say is if I get a card wrong, I have to see it again in 10 minutes, and then again 1 day later, and then again 3 days after that, and then it becomes a normal card again, which personally I think would be excessive, but that's how this little window works. Leech action, if you get a card wrong a certain number of times, right now mine is set to 8, then it counts as a leech card. You want that to be tag only, otherwise if it's set to suspend card, that will suspend a card that you get wrong a whole bunch, which is kind of the opposite of what you want it to do. Burying is an option too, so if a card has multiple blanks in it, those are called sibling cards. Each blank is a different sibling in the family, and you can tell Anki, I don't want to see the siblings of my new cards or of my review cards, and so you're not seeing like the same sentence over and over again, so you just memorize the sentence. This is per personal preference, I think. Neither one is automatically good or automatically bad. The rest of this stuff I really wouldn't worry about too much. So now that we have set our cards differently, this is set to max number of new cards, so we just have all 110 congenital malformation cards available. And you can see that most of these live in embryology, some of them live in pathology. So if you only want to see the pathology-related ones, you can click here and just do these 4 cards, hit Study Now, and there you go. Or, if I go back to Dex, you can just click on Block GI, and that will see all of the cards that you have for that day, regardless of which of these little subcategories they live in. So that is how you start that process. A couple other quick things I want you to be aware of. Let's say you're a couple days into the week, right? So you've got a whole bunch of different sets of cards unsuspended and it's going pretty well. You're getting ready for the quiz. But you realize that before the quiz, you don't really need to study all 300 of these things because that'll take forever and you already mostly get it. But what you really want is to just take the congenital malformation cards. So what you could do is go back through and individually suspend all the non-congenital malformation cards, but that's really slow. So what I would recommend you do is come over into the browser, click on the congenital malformation tag, and then go to Edit, Create Filter Deck, and then you can title it whatever you want. I'm going to title it Congenital Malformations and up this limit to 9999. And then you will get the congenital malformation cards pulled out of the rest of the deck. And as you do them, they'll go back into the rest of the deck once you get them sorted out. So if you want to just plow through the 110 congenital malformations cards right before you study, this is a very easy way to do it. And then you can delete the congenital malformations filter deck, which has this blue text, and the cards don't get deleted, they just get returned to back where they came from in the GI block. So that's really all there is to it. Last thing to be aware of is if you go to Tools, Add-ons, this will give you a whole bunch of, this is a whole mess. I don't even know what half of these do, if I'm being completely honest. But this will give you various tools that you can use to help out making your Anki easier. So Amboss add-on is really helpful if you have Amboss. Make sure you have image occlusion enhanced and these image ones if you're going to use image occlusion cards, which are basically a picture with a certain part of it blanked out. It's really helpful for studying anatomy and histology because you can just blank the labels and practice memorizing what you're looking at. To add one of these, you need to go to the great World Wide Web. Hang on just a second. And Anki add-on image occlusion enhanced, for example. It'll take you to the Anki web and it'll tell you what all it does, and that's great. And then you scroll down and there's a code at the bottom. And so you copy the code and then you go to Get Add-ons and you paste the code. That adds, and then all you have to do is restart Anki to apply the changes. So those are the basics of how I have been using Anki throughout my medical career. You can also add cards. So this is an image occlusion. You just paste a picture in here. Oops. Or more likely what you'll be doing are close cards. So on King close cards. On King overhaul is another type of close. And you can say, I'm going to put it into the GI block deck. And what you do is you hit Command-Shift-C to create a blank. And then it will say something like Meckel diverticulum is a true diverticulum, or something like that. And then you can hit add, and voila, now that is a card in the deck. And if we go back to the front, now there are 296. So I just added one. You're also able, when you go to block GI, here's that card. But let's say, okay, this is not a clear thing. There are so many kinds of diverticulum. What does this even mean? So I can hit edit, which is just hit the E key, and it will take you to this card, and you can tweak it. So I can say which GI diverticulum as a hint. That's what this double colon is. And now it will say, okay, which GI diverticulum. You can also edit the text and go from there. So I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions at all. I would love to help you with this. Again, I cannot promise that all of these cards are within the date. I can't even promise that they're all accurate, but I do hope that they'll be helpful and that you'll be cautious and responsible about your learning. And I hope that these will help you along that journey if Anki is something that's beneficial to you. So I'm going to continue updating these decks as quickly as I can so that everything is ready for all of you as you head into your new blocks and the rest of your M1 and M2 years. If there's anything specific that doesn't make sense or that you need, please email me. And otherwise, I encourage you all to just stay vigilant, learn together, and good luck with the preclinical years of medical school.